Hello, welcome to this first video giving you your week 12 feedback. This one is based on the discussions around the chapter reading about the political crisis and sectionalism in the mid-19th century. The first question asked, why did the 1850 compromise fail? This was the attempted compromise which made California wholly a free state and banned the slave trade in DC on the anti-slavery camp, and for the benefit of the pro-slavery camp, it potentially opened up slavery in the West, in Utah and New Mexico, should settlers decide to adopt it in any potential future state constitution, and passed the Fugitive Slave Act, which gave greater powers to bring slaves back to Southerners seeking them in the northern states. It failed because it was a disappointment, particularly to the northern side. The concessions they got were relatively small. In return for that, there was the potential of slavery spreading into the West, a potential which proved to be correct given the later Kansas-Nebraska Act and Dred Scott decision. And the Fugitive Slave Act was particularly hated. It brought slavery in some ways into the North by allowing Southern slave hunters to go into the free states, and helped it a lot to turn opposition to slavery from a very marginal position in the North to something that was more mainstream. The second question asked, identify some signs of increased sectionalism in the 1850s. I wasn't so much looking for analysis and description of all the events, rather than events that were symbolic or represented that sectionalism was becoming deeper in US politics. Generally speaking, politics was splitting along north-south lines as much as, if not more so, than along party lines. We see the collapse of the Whigs, their failure to reconcile between pro and anti-slavery factions of that party, and the rise of the Republicans. In the election of 1856, the Republicans, although they lost under Fremont, established themselves as the second major party. You also see splits within the Democrats. Eventually, by 1860, they split into separate northern and southern wings. And we see the rising importance of the issue of slavery beyond merely the ranks of abolitionists, as the Republicans emerge not as an anti-slavery party per se. They're not openly saying they'll abolish slavery, but as a party defined by northern fears that slavery would continue to expand into the West. The third question asked, why did the election of 1860 lead to southern states seceding? Well, it was not because Lincoln said he was going to abolish slaves. That's a common misconception. I think a lot of you identified it's not that Lincoln was saying he would abolish slavery, but rather that Lincoln was very firmly against the further spread of slavery into the West. The southern states, regardless of what Lincoln actually said, interpreted his victory as a defeat for slavery. They believed that behind his talk of merely being against a further extension of it, he really was going to end slavery, even though that's not what he said in his manifesto. Compromises failed. The Crittenden Compromise, which would have established constitutionally the permanence of slavery in the South in return for limiting its spread into the West, was rejected by the South, but also by Lincoln. So even if the South had not rejected it, the North wasn't going to accept it either. There was no basis for negotiation once Lincoln said he was going to reject that compromise. And coming back to the issue of slavery, although the North was at this point, before and in the early years of the Civil War, not standing for abolition, this has led some people to say that the war was not about slavery. Well, the South was very clear that this was about defending slavery. For example, the Statement for Secession, the Declaration of Secession by South Carolina, mentioned slavery, I've not looked this up, this is from memory, something like 57 times. They don't talk about economics or states' rights, or at least not states' rights in any context other than that of slavery. They are very clear, regardless of what Lincoln may say, that this is for them a war to defend slavery.